For everyone with an interest in MASH or, more broadly, steatotic liver disease, surf's up. Surfing the MASH Tsunami's annual year-end interviews with some of the people who made a difference in the masled world in 2023, Season 4, Episode 50 plus, starts now.
Today on Surfing the MASH Tsunami.
Reservations is if you think about, screening diabetics with FIB4 as the initial test, everyone is so focused on, we're going to miss some people. I'm concerned the other direction. So you can see the cycle of, them having to send us 1/3 of their patients, and then for us to say, 2/3 of them never needed to come to us. And please, by the way, do this every year, just keep doing the FIB4. I mean, it just does not make a lot of sense to me.
Of all the different stimulus response schedules, the least effective one is random and intermittent. So you want to know, you hit a bar, you get a pellet. Or if I step on that spot, I get burned. Either way, I know there's something. But if I hit the bar 10 times and I get one pellet, and then I don't get another pellet for the next 6 times, another for the next 14 times, I'm not learning anything. And I'm not getting my behavior reinforced.
I think it also depends what we're screening for. If we're only screening for liver disease, then yes, we're going to bounce back a lot of those diabetes patients back to endocrine. However, if we're looking for reinforcement of looking for cardiometabolic effect of steatotic liver, then we educate them through a different format, and that's still intervention.
I don't know if you guys heard, but the FDA just recently announced that potentially there will be an accelerated approval pathway for patients with cirrhosis based on histology, going from F4 to F3, and this is creating a lot of excitement.
As a momentous year in steatotic liver disease comes to an end, the Surfing the MASH Tsunami team is reviewing the year with some of our favorite guests. Today, liver health advocate Louise Campbell, FRCP, and pricing and forecasting guru Roger Green interview hepatology researcher and key opinion leader Dr. Naim Alkhouri on key research studies, events, and initiatives in 2023 on the Surfing the MASH Tsunami podcast.
So today we're joined by our good friend Naim Alkhouri, who has become a regular and really fantastic presence on this podcast over the last few months. Naim, how are you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing great. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing fantastic. What time zone are you in right now?
I'm actually in Cleveland, Ohio, so Eastern.
I thought so because I looked through your window and it looked like the same level of sun that I'm getting right now and not what you'd find in Arizona right now. So
it's honestly been lovely in Ohio this week for December. No snow, and I saw the sun 3 times, which is very unusual.
They're going to want you to come back every week because you're obviously bringing good luck with you. And Jorn is making his way back home from Saarland, so I don't know that we're going to have him with us today, but we do have Louise from her brand new London apartment. We don't have video on this, but if we did, you'd see that Louise has a white wall behind her. And Louise, what are you sitting on right now?
I'm sitting on a beanbag. I don't have any furniture or anything where we do this, but I do have internet to do Surfing the NASH because, of course, priorities are priorities.
I'm impressed because Louise is sleeping on a blow-up mattress, and my back doesn't allow that anymore, so I think that's really fantastic. So to start, for each of us, and this is going to be challenging because Louise and Jorn and I are going to have to keep making these up as we go along, but one good personal thing that happened in your life in 2023, just to give our audience a feel for what your year has been like.
I would say 2023 has been a good year, relatively speaking. We've had some ups and downs, but I would say, I was looking back and I feel like personally I've accomplished a lot. I bought a new house in Ohio in addition to the house in Phoenix. I spend more time with family. Professionally also, I have more free time to spend on creative things, including educational activities and working with different pharmaceutical companies. So overall, I would say it's been a good year and the excitement is building up. Next year is going to be hopefully an even better year than 2023.
We all hope that every year, but some years you have more reason to than others. This might be one of the more reason to years. I think that's right. So Louise, one personal thing in the last year.
Oh gosh, that's an unfair question when we do so many of these. I'll stick with this week, and it was my wedding anniversary. So we went to the Ritz for lunch, which we tend to do every year. So that was as lovely as ever. Read recommend it to everybody if you get the opportunity.
So am I to expect that you and Mark were actually in the same hemisphere this week?
We are in the same hemisphere, the same country, certainly for several weeks. So that'll be good. And it's cold, so he can stop winding me up about being 37 degrees and moaning about how hot it is when it's -2 here. My heart bleeds, not.
Well, it's funny. In the Celsius Fahrenheit translation of life, it was 37 here yesterday, and that was not anything to write home about. That would be about 2 in London. And I'm sure that Naim, if he gets 37 Fahrenheit in Cleveland, is delighted.
Absolutely. Today we're going up to 50 degrees, which is unusual for December in Cleveland.
That would be 10 Celsius for those of you elsewhere in the world, and we're going to be in the same place. So Naim, we're living the same life today. And here we are spending a half an hour together on the podcast. I gave a personal best for the year about seeing what happens when a 5-year-old sees Disney World for the first time and what an amazing experience that is. I think another personal, also related to travel, is that we got to spend a lot of time this year in places that we love and we have a lot of history with. A lot of time in Cape May, which is always a favorite of mine on the Jersey Shore, and a few other places during the year. So it's just in that regard been a great year for touching base in some of the places that I've had the most fun in my life. And by the way, intend to again. This is not a denouement. We keep going, but it reminds me how much I like some of these places. And as much as I love where we live, is how much I like getting out of here sometimes. So with all that, why don't we dive in? Let's start by stepping back a year. We're stepping back 11 and a half months, truthfully. On January 1st, 2023, Naim, and then Louise and I will kind of chip in on this, but if we have to answer this question 8 times in a row, we're all going to get crazy. What was your biggest hope? What was your realistic hope? And what was kind of your stretch fantasy for the entire fatty liver world in 2023?
I mean, I was hopeful that we will have the first drug FDA approved this year. I had my reservations, but I thought, with a thoughtful approach that will reassure the FDA and providers that medicine can be used safely in a selected group of patients, that we will have that blessing from the FDA. This did not pan out, but I think the way the data were presented did not provide that necessary reassurance. So we are, hoping that next year will be the year that we will have the first drug. Obviously, we have the PDUFA date for resmetirom with the FDA on March 14th. I was also hoping to see the results of the implementation of the AGA and AACE clinical care pathways at the primary care level. And to be honest with you, I've been a little bit disappointed with the uptake. And, I keep telling people when they ask me I'm still waiting to get one referral from primary care for elevated FIB4. I haven't seen one in my practice, and we are a very busy hepatology practice. We see them coming for elevated liver enzymes. We see them for incidental finding of steatotic liver disease, but I'm yet to do a consult because of elevated FIB4. So the uptake has been a little bit disappointing, which means that we need to educate more and potentially also think about the downstream effects of this pathway and how it's being perceived by primary care. And one of my reservations is, if you think about, screening diabetics with FIB4 as the initial test, everyone is so focused on, we're going to miss some people, we need to lower the cut point to 1. I'm concerned the other direction. If we actually screen diabetics and say send people with FIB4 more than 1.3, that's going to be 30% of diabetics in any clinic. And then they're going to go to a specialty clinic to get the FibroScan, because FibroScan, at least in the United States, is not available in endocrine and primary care clinics. They get the FibroScan, then 70% of these people will have KPA less than 8. And now we're going to send them back to the diabetes clinic and say, don't worry about it. So you can see the cycle of, them having to send us 1/3 of their patients, and then for us to say, 2/3 of them never needed to come to us. And please, by the way, do this every year, just keep doing the FIB4. I mean, it just does not make a lot of sense to me. And I think the misconception is that, we don't want to miss anyone. Well, we are missing 95% of people already. And if we can take it from 95% to 80%, 15% delta, and identifying high-risk people, it'll be more meaningful. So, one proposal is maybe we should actually use a higher cut point for FIB4. Or, what Louise is doing is, let's make sure that, these liver stiffness measurement machines are available at the primary care level. Then it makes sense. Then they do the FIB4, they do the FibroScan, find really high-yield patients before they send them to specialty care. So just some of the thoughts. But again, it's been a good year. I mean, I don't want to sound negative. These were aspirational goals. But I would say, I was just looking at PubMed the other day and just seeing the publications that I was part of in 2023. And we have large randomized controlled trials published in top-tier journals, including New England Journal of Medicine with the pegozafermin data. That was very exciting. Response on NASH resolution, fibrosis regression, a Nature Medicine paper with resmetirom, the Maestro NAFLD, another major paper, several hepatology papers with different compounds, including the NGM one. So I would say it's been a good year, but the two biggest biggest things that did not pan out were drug approval and then really high uptake of the screening pathways in primary care and endocrine clinics.
Can I make an observation about the second one you talked about? Louise, you're laughing. Did you know where I'm going here? Is it, oh no, I don't know where he's going here.
No, I probably know where you're going because Naim is the one person I giggle with because he could interview himself. So he's ripped me of all of my questions on how many publications, because I looked them up, how many, you just answered all the questions I'd have asked you. Plus to say that about the FIB4 and the fact that everybody says we're missing people. We're missing a load, most of them at the moment anyway, so anything's better. Don't moan about missing. And I'm going, he's interviewed himself.
So I want to talk about the law of good intentions a little bit, okay? Because I think what Naim points out is exactly right. By the way, in some ways, one could argue that while we got to a good place by the end of the year, the nomenclature travel over 2023 was a little messier than it might have been for similar reasons, which is that more attention was paid to getting it exactly right and less attention was paid to getting it exactly implemented. So when the nomenclature came out in Vienna as approved, there were large questions about the practical implications that had yet to be answered. Now, those were answered in Boston. I think they were answered positively and effectively. And as a result, the path is cleared so that I don't think there are any more nomenclature skeptics, actually. The last one I knew of actually decided, it came out last week and said they're in support. We'll have an interview on that next week, Louise. But I don't think there are any nomenclature skeptics yet left. But it was a choppier process than it might have been because people thought more about getting it perfect than getting it right. And Quentin Anstey is the one who says about NITs all the time, you can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And I think the example you're giving about let's not miss anybody in FIB4 is correct. If you could close the delta 30%, right, that would be heroic. And at that point, we'd still be missing 2/3.
Yeah, but I think, for a primary care physician, you have to understand that they're not analyzing their data on a weekly basis and seeing the yield. I mean, it really takes a few cases when you say, if calculate the FIB4, if it's more than 2.67, please send these people. Then they're going to get the feedback from the specialist that, thank you send me this patient and actually they have cirrhosis or we identified F3. And then the next step would be, well, why don't we lower now to 1.3, understanding that, many of these people will not really have advanced disease, but also early identification will potentially help with closer follow-up and making sure that you start medicine when needed. But I think, lowering the threshold and just saying we don't want to miss anyone kind of creates that inertia like, well, I'm sending people, they're coming back, they're telling me don't worry about it. What's the point in all of this? Yeah, and I think it will change when we have a drug approved because as a clinician, you just will feel terrible if there's a medicine that potentially can change the natural history of the disease and, your patients are not getting on it. So that hopefully will change next year.
It's interesting, though, because you make a kind of a compelling point from behavioral psychology, right? Of all the different stimulus response schedules, the least effective one is random and intermittent. So you want to know, you hit a bar, you get a pellet. Or if I step on that spot, I get burned. Either way, I know there's something not to do. But if I hit the bar 10 times and I get one pellet, and then I don't get another pellet for the next 6 times, another for the next 14 times, I'm not learning anything. And I'm not getting my behavior reinforced. So, which is exactly what you're talking about. If I've got to send lots of patients out and most of them come back, the message to me is this is a fishing expedition. And busy people only like fishing expeditions on the days they choose to fish. Not to be confused with every day in the office. I couldn't agree with you more. I hadn't thought about it, but it makes total sense to me.
Yeah, and I love, the example you just provided. I'm going to use it moving forward because it's absolutely right. I mean, they have so many things on their plate, and then to say, oh, just do it, and who cares? We're happy to do the fiber scan. And, it just doesn't resonate with them. They're like, you're talking 30% of my patients. Are you for real? You want me to refer you 30%? So they want to be more selective. They want to see high yield on the referrals. And another concern I hear from primary care is that, when we send you these patients, they become hepatology patients. And now you guys are not also discharging them. So even when they have steatotic liver disease, but the KPA number is very low, let's say 4, now they have this disease. Now they are, being kind of like coded as having steatotic liver disease. And this is going to add cost to the healthcare system in a population that is very unlikely to end up dying from liver disease complications. So we have to be more mindful how we message this.
You know what, Naim? We're going to do an episode on this in January. I'm going to invite you back because I think you've opened up a whole bunch of really interesting issues issues, and I'm only going to make one comment, then I want to move on. If I ask you to give me 30% of your patients and you give me back a positive test 80% of the time, that's amazingly powerful. It's if I give you back a positive result 10% of the time, 15% of the time, that you get into this intermittent reinforcement problem, because I don't know which ones to. Or if you're going to ask for 1.3s, ask for 1.3s with 3 concomitant conditions. So you're improving your odds of not missing people, but by being more selective in who you're asking for.
Yeah. Or, there's a possibility, at least in the United States, to do a reflex to ELF with FIP4 and then maybe a refer, but then the cost is the biggest issue with ELF and coverage. And we've had, many issues. I suspect in the UK, probably you guys cover ELF better than us because it's been around for longer.
I think that depends. I'm working with a couple of projects at the moment and they can't get a hold of ELF. So that's one of the sticking points. So I don't think it's as available as people make out. But I think it also depends what we're screening for. If we're only screening for liver disease, then yes, we're going to bounce back a lot of those diabetes patients back to endocrine. However, if we're looking for reinforcement of looking for cardiometabolic effect of steatotic liver, then actually my areas, yes, we do it, but we educate them through a different format, and that's still intervention. And we do get a lot of improvement in people with diabetes and reducing fat because they can measure it. It's not the scales. I don't mind if they lose the weight off their hips. If it doesn't come out their liver, it's not changing their metrics. And I think they like to see where it's coming out. And a lot of people, I've said it before, don't want to lose their curves. They just want to lose their liver fat. So it depends what we're looking for.
One observation, let me move on, which is that what you just described aligns. If, in fact, you sent 30% of your patients and what came back is feedback that said half of these are at increased cardiovascular risk, for example, I'm giving you back your patient. You just need to watch cardiovascular more carefully because of this result. That, I think, is a real help to primary care, Naim. I'm looking at you, but I think that would conform with what you'd like to see. It's not that they send them back. It's that they send them back and say, hey, no problem here, because they've all looked at the liver. And then if there's a liver problem, they keep them.
Yeah, but if we're talking about diabetic patients, they do have increased, cardiovascular risk. This is almost by definition now if you have type 2 diabetes. So what is the added, value?
That's what we got to figure out. That's right. If you're going to send them, have value. Okay. With that, moving on. Well, first of all, what do you think was the biggest win for the disease and the ecosystem in 2023? And then I'm going to follow up by asking of all the work that you've done this year, and there's been a ton of it, we all know, which are the one or two that you think have had the greatest impact on how people are thinking about the disease or treating now?
In the NIT space, we've heard about several new tests that hopefully will make it to the clinic next year. So there's the NIS2+, which is a simplified NIS4, and then the massive score that relies on lipidomics and metabolomics. And these are two interesting tests that will help us hopefully select better patients that will benefit from resmetirom and other drugs. I was very pleased to see the data on the dual agonists, especially the ones that have glucagon. You guys saw the data with the Merck compound, efinopegdutide, and it looks more potent than just a single GLP-1 in terms of defatting the liver, especially on MRI PDFF. So that's looking very promising. You guys saw the data with retatrutide, the triple agonist. So now we have, better weight loss and more defatting of the liver. So that looks very promising. Of course, the resmetirom Maestro NASH is probably the biggest news, and hopefully this will lead to FDA approval next year. For me personally, happy to be part of this community and contribute significantly to enrolling clinical trials, but also I was part of several international meetings that really made me feel like we have this global community. I had a meeting at Wilton Park with Jeffrey Lazarus. He organized the meeting, and we had all the global leaders talking about the research agenda and what we need to do to have also a healthcare policy agenda in different countries to tackle this epidemic. I participated in a meeting with Novo Nordisk in Madrid, where they actually invited 35 promising leaders in MASLD and MASH from all over the globe, from Japan to Australia to Europe. And we actually, for 2 days, did training for them on all the aspects of disease development, progression, NITs, promising therapeutic agents, the innovations in NAFLD care pathways. The Barcelona meeting has been also an annual meeting that I participate in. We organize our Desert Liver Conference, helped also educate several providers as part of the these updates that we do locally in Arizona after ASLD, after EASL. One of the highlights for me personally also has been working with Mazen Nuruddin and Jorn Schattenberg. We started the group, so we call ourselves Next-Gen Hepatology, so trying to hopefully lead the way in NIT development and also clinical trials and protocol design, and help several pharmaceutical and diagnostic companies, and they're two of my favorite people. So it's always fun to work with friends, and we get along, and we all have young kids, and just nice to meet in different parts of the world. So as I said earlier, it's been a great year.
Did you sleep in that? The description there.
I look at my parents, both of them are physicians, and honestly, they worked, 10 times harder than I do because they just saw like 50 patients a day. They worked 6 days a week. They took 5 days off a year. And I think life is getting easier for all of us, when you look back. So I don't know, when you grow up with that kind of work ethic, I think for me, I'm always feeling like a slacker and I can do more. And why am I sleeping 8 hours when I can get by with 5.5 hours? And so I think
because you're sending your body through multiple time zones a day, so it's still trying to get caught up. I mean, the idea of having dual residences in Cleveland and Phoenix isn't exactly like having Taunton and London. I mean, Louise is always in the same time zone, and she's got to drive a couple hours between places. You're flying, 5 hours from location to location, and you move in 2 to 3 hours of time zone.
Yeah. And honestly, like in December, I have basically 6 flights between Cleveland and Phoenix. So yeah, it's becoming a little bit too much. But another very important milestone is I do have Executive Platinum Pro on American Airlines this year.
There you go. Yeah. When I traveled a lot, I had that with United. It really did change everything, didn't it? Okay. So other than OCA not getting approved and the other things you talked about, is there anything that you've been disappointed in with how the profession has progressed in the last year?
No, I mean, I wouldn't call this a disappointment. I think, I would like to see, trial design, seeing some alternative pathways to FDA approval. We had the meeting with the FDA. They're very thoughtful. They're trying to make the right decision. But I felt like they're a little bit too conservative and that there are, alternative pathways. Alternative pathways to FDA approval, just for the conditional approval piece, I think, providing that will potentially be beneficial for, anyone in drug development. And it will not lead to full approval, but, it'll be a quicker way to get conditional approval. You still have to show outcomes. But I think there are some good developments. And I don't know if you guys heard, but the FDA just recently announced that potentially there will be an accelerated approval pathway for patients with cirrhosis based on histology.
Yeah.
And this is big news now. So going from F4 to F3, and this is creating a lot of excitement. So I think it's not a disappointment. I think it's just kind of like the FDA being too conservative, but also I think they're making some forward-looking movements. So I appreciate them. I think assembling that whole 2-day FDA meeting was a great idea. I really hope they do another one next year as we generate more data. And I think we'll get to a point where we can design trials without histology.
Obviously, that would be fantastic, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Now, so follow-up question there is, with the transition from semi-quantitative pathologist-rated scores to AI-based pathology, would you see that as a big benefit, small benefit, or really in the practicality of conducting trials, not a big difference?
I mean, to be honest with you, I like the data they're generating for us to understand mechanisms that lead to disease progression, and actually looking at all these variables that PharmaNest and HistoIndex and PathAI, they can generate in fibrosis. HistoIndex, they have 184 variables for fibrosis. I would love to understand what they mean clinically. This is very exciting, but at the end of the day, we don't want to continue to rely on histology. So I think this is very nice for research purposes, but not practical moving forward. So
not approval.
Yeah. But I think very valuable data that are being generated, and they will help us understand the disease. I think they'll have very great value in drug development also, and potentially with animal models also, and just, translating that animal data into ideally, human translation, maybe using these AI algorithms will be very helpful.
You've been really generous, and we're already half an hour in, and we haven't even gotten to the final question yet. So instead of asking tons of follow-up questions, we'll just have to schedule another interview with you at another point, because we're going to be doing some interviews next year where we can go back and touch on a couple of these things in more detail. 2024, realistic hope, obviously resmetirom. Paint me the most glowing picture you can realistically envision steatotic liver disease, diagnosis, treatment, and patient management will look like at the end of this year. Optimistic, but totally somewhat realistic.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously having a resmetirom available in our clinics will be a game changer. I think with resmetirom, also the NIT easy pathway that will be used to select appropriate patients for treatment, and to monitor response to treatment will become more clear when you have the drug available in the hands of clinicians. I think I would love to see a positive readout from the Essence phase 3 semaglutide clinical trial. This will be also a game changer, and I'm still optimistic that we may see a signal on fibrosis, and hopefully we'll have both endpoints being achieved, MASH resolution and fibrosis regression. I would love to hear that Novo is also filing to get semaglutide approved in 2025. I would love to see the data from the Symmetry cirrhosis trial with Akero at 96 weeks, showing us positive results in a cirrhotic population with a decent sample size. I would love to see great enrollment in the new phase 3 programs that hopefully will start in 2024. Akero started already for the F2, F3 population. Hopefully we'll have the cirrhosis population in F3 next year. Similar hopes, for 89 Bio. I would like to see also more histology data with the dual and triple agonists, and there's anticipated results with Eli Lilly and Boehringer Ingelheim. So a lot of exciting readouts, I would say, in 2024. And, I would love to see also the creation of MASH centers of excellence. I would love to incorporate more digital therapeutics in how we take care of patients. Also generate more data with the NAIL NIT consortium, especially the prospective part of that. And I would hope that we'll be starting in Q1 or Q2 next year to prospectively enroll patients to really generate the data necessary for the FDA to design trials without biopsy.
So what I think I just heard you say is that next-gen hepatology plans not to sleep at all next year.
Yeah, I think if 2023 was busy, 2024 is going to be busier. In a good way. I would say, Roger, this is like paying taxes. The more you pay, you should keep your mouth shut and just be grateful because you're making more money. The more traveling, the less sleep, you should keep your mouth shut and just be grateful.
Fantastic. Naim, thank you so much for your time today. And you raised 2 or 3 things that are worth either episodes or just 1-on-2 or 1-on-3 conversations in the next year. I'll write you a note on that in the next week or two. Always fantastic seeing you. Welcome to the Eastern time zone, as at least you're co-located home. I'm much happier whenever anyone I like is in my time zone, however many miles away.
Thank you, guys. Have a lovely weekend.
You too. Thank you, my friend.
And
Bye-bye now.
Festive season.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
And now for the Season 4 End-of-Year Episodes Business Report.
Slava Ukraini, Chayim Slava, glory to Ukraine, glory to heroes. And also Am Yisrael Chai, the people of Israel live. The last time I recorded a business section for this podcast, the U.S. Congress was delaying getting badly needed aid to Ukraine. The world was decrying the death of Palestinian civilians, while most were forgetting, and even worse, some were celebrating, the horrible rapes, beheadings, and other beastly crimes Hamas committed on innocent Israelis October 7th that precipitated the Israeli military action. I'd love to say that 3 weeks later, things have changed for the better, and there were days of hope in the Middle East during the Israel-Hamas ceasefire. But sadly, little is meaningfully improved. As we come to this holiday season, let's hope the Ukrainian military maintains and perseveres through the coming winter, and that we can find a solution in the Middle East that preserves an Israel that does not have to fear its neighbors and allows a Palestinian people who live next to them to find peace and prosperity and pursue a better quality of life for their families and themselves. Slava Ukraini, Am Yisrael Chai.
Congratulations, Yarn, and welcome back.
Last time we met, it was too soon to announce Professor Schottenberg's promotion to department head at the medical school in Saarland. Well, that's official now. Jorn has assumed his new responsibilities, and he will be with us on a more or less regular basis going forward. We may need to work a bit on how to improve his internet speed and reliability when staying overnight in Hamburg. I'm sure we'll work that out.
Hey, Spotify, thanks for the good news.
Last week, we received from Spotify their wrap-up numbers from 2023. What these numbers told us was that we had more growth this year than we had anticipated. 50% more listeners, 11% more streams, 72% of people listening doing so for the first time. And if we extrapolate up from Spotify's share of our entire listener pool, 3,000 listeners who rate us in their top 10 podcasts, 2,000 rating us in their top 5, and 750 rating us their overall top. Those are bigger numbers than we thought we had, and we're excited to know that so many people are gaining benefit from this podcast.
You will see new graphics and a new email address when we all return in 2024.
In the interest of efficiency and recognition of Eric's increasingly demanding schedule, we decided to execute the entire graphic and website cutover to MASH Tsunami. All will be fixed when we come back in the beginning of the new year.
The vault is closed for 2023.
Historically, we've included neither Vault conversations nor business sections during the year-end interview series. No more Vault this year as well, but there are a few business section comments I want to share. These may change during the interview week or not. If they change, we'll let you know. And that's it for the year. I want to thank our team, Jorn, Louise, Jake, Mike, Eric, Steve, for their work throughout the year, and more important, to thank you, the listeners, who stuck with us throughout. We've got more interviews ahead, and after that, we'll be back early in January with a new year of episodes and perhaps some new features as well. Until then, enjoy the holiday. Happy 2024, and as always, stay safe and surf on. Bye-bye now.
Join us tomorrow when our interview partner will be HistoIndex Chief Scientific Office Dean Tai.